This talk is about innovation at the edge or to the edge in the store, restaurant, or branch. I'm Richard Newman. My company, Reliant, is an edge computing platform provider. We're among the leaders in the space. We've got more than 10,000 locations that are using our edge technology today to drive application delivery to the branch or store or restaurant. We're here because our partner Intel made it possible for us to speak. I want to thank Intel for making this possible. They've contributed tremendously to the Mobile Payments Conference overall, and it's been a pleasure to work with them on this. So with that said, when we talk about innovation, we talk about the branch of the future. It covers a lot of things, and I don't think there's any one definition that sort of, addresses all the innovation that happens, but it's everything from, augmented reality, both virtual and augmented reality. It speaks to a lot of mobility, the use of wireless technologies. It speaks to engagement with consumers' mobile devices, both when they're at the physical branch as well as when they're not. There's going to be a lot of IoT devices, Internet of Things, as well. That's part of it. And it represents, a real sort of push forward off of the traditional bank experience. When we talk about bank, of course, we're talking about retail banking. And retail has been, very involved with innovation, both in payments as well as just sort of in future technologies overall. And there's some terrific things which are not so much the future, but the present. A good example of that, of course, is the Amazon Go store. I hope many of you had a chance to visit an Amazon Go location because it's really transformative. I mean, you walk into an Amazon Go environment, it's cashierless. So Amazon doesn't make it totally unattended. There's usually someone there, but you're not required to interact with a cashier when you walk out. It engages your mobile device. The transactions take place in the cloud, but the physical world is being obviously very well represented here because you're walking in and you're interacting with product that's both perishable as well as hard goods. You could pick stuff up, you could put stuff back, you could pick up an energy bar, you can eat the energy bar, and you'll be charged for it. And what's remarkable is how all of this works and how seamless it is. And how, unlike, sort of proofs of concept that we see in the past, it wasn't something that just sort of happened and then disappeared. It wasn't something that was considered to be sort of, well, maybe we're a little too early for it. It's really now. And Amazon is aggressively looking to push this technology out. They're moving some of it, at least, into larger format grocery locations. And I'm sure, especially in the COVID-19 era, many of you have spent time in grocery stores and realize like these waits at the checkout, they're not necessarily, enhancing the experience. And that's true, of course, for retail overall. And it extends even further into, the world of a world we want to be, which is much more contactless, where we don't have to interact as much with some of the technology, by touching it, especially in today's era. And obviously there's nothing that's sort of, it's the only thing you're picking up here are the products that you want and you walk out. There's no swiping, there's nothing, it's totally seamless. It's really remarkable. So the question is, how's this possible? What makes this the case? And the answer is, this is a function really of a sea change that we've had over the last, we'll call it about 10 years or so, from its initial, iterations to now. And it's cloud computing. And cloud computing is more than just the fact that, more and more applications, more and more systems are going up into the cloud. It's actually about the technologies being used. It's about new architectures, microservices architectures. It's about agility. It's about DevOps. It's about site reliability engineering. And it's about web scale, operating at scale across lots and lots and lots of instances. But the cloud alone doesn't make the branch of the future possible, and it can't make the Amazon Go store happen, or any other expressions. There's something missing in that. And that's really what we're talking about today. That thing, of course, is the physical point of presence, the store, the restaurant, or the branch, and the need to deliver some level of application functionality there. Because the cloud in and of itself can't reach out and really impact these physical locations without some level of local application delivery. And it's not just the fact that you can run an app in there, because obviously, if you're a banker, you've had applications and software running on in your branches for a long time. And if you're a restaurant or a retailer, it's the same thing. It's really about how those things interact and how they work with each other. that makes it possible, that makes the future applications we talk about, that makes the Amazon Go experience happen, that makes the bank of the future, or the bank in the box, or the branch in the box happen. It's the ability to take those web scale technologies and have them actually work in concert with what's happening in the cloud at the physical location. That requires the edge. So when you talk about what is the edge, where's this edge that we're talking about that's actually running these applications? It's in a few different places. So it's in the mobile devices themselves, right? It's in the iPhone or Android device or the Android tablet or the Microsoft tablet that you might have deployed, in a given location like a Surface. Those systems have the ability to run software in a way, obviously, that goes far beyond the old mobile devices of yesterday. In fact, some of the innovations that you're seeing there include things like the Apple neural network processing firmware that they built into all their go-forward iPhone units. It's that level of neural network and machine learning application execution that makes some of the really cool things like Siri and some of the just now emerging AR, augmented reality applications possible. And when you're talking about those devices in a store, not in the consumer's hands, or in a branch, not in the consumer's hands, you might be talking about things like, the magic mirror that I have here, or the signage display. Those two have CPUs in them, they have memory, they have the ability to execute applications, and they represent a form of the edge. But that's not the only edge we're talking about. Another edge that's getting a lot of attention is the edge in the 5G space. It's known as the MEC, the multi-access edge compute space, which is being pushed near cell phone towers or at cell phone towers. And this is another very powerful, sort of expression of the edge. And the reason this is so important is because when you start thinking about 5G, you're talking about a lot of bandwidth, which gives you a lot of capabilities to do things, whether it's very rich content delivery or whether it's, executing very complicated applications very quickly. But in fact, when you're talking about the bandwidth that 5G uses, it's gigabit bandwidth down to individual devices. And when you start to talk about 5 or 10,000 individual devices potentially being served by a single, 5G aggregation point, you quickly realize that you can't just pipe all that back to the cloud. You just can't round trip all of that data back and forth each time. And that requires some level of front end processing. And that front end processing, of course, can take place on those end devices, those Android or iOS or Surface devices that I spoke about earlier, or it can happen in a more generic application execution framework at the 5G tower. This is often known as the service provider or the consumer edge, where these things are taking place. And this is going to enable the next generation of 5G, applications, whether they're artificial intelligence based or rich content based or gaming based or whatever else have you. And the service providers, the Verizons, the AT&Ts, et cetera, of the world are working hard to make this edge available to people with consumer applications and to a second level enterprises that want to be able to deliver applications into this. But for us, at least, another very interesting edge, an edge that you guys can start taking advantage of right now, is the enterprise edge. It represents that box in the lower right-hand corner there, that location in a branch or in a restaurant or in a store where you can start delivering edge applications. So why do you need an edge? Again, this starts to get to be the question. Well, first of all, as I mentioned, speed. The ability to execute an application locally means it'll generally be faster than one executed in the cloud. It's closer to the users and consumers of data. And that includes both application execution as well as moving content back and forth. If the content doesn't have to round trip to the cloud each time, you're going to have a faster and more responsive environment. Another very important point is reliability. You want a local edge. You want an edge at your store, at your branch, because you can't always count on the cloud being available. You might have degradations in connectivity. You might lose connectivity entirely. You might want to have some level of resiliency or redundancy, in which case the edge is where you want to run those applications, because many of our customers, whether in banking or whether in retail, they can't just stop their operations because they lost connectivity. So as much as we're going to push a lot of software infrastructure, a lot of systems into the cloud for reliability, for the very high availability the cloud gives us, the much lower total cost of ownership the cloud gives us, we also need to have some level of local delivery for reliability. Security and compliance is another important reason. You don't necessarily want to ship sensitive data back and forth to the cloud. Certain compliance requirements like GDPR or data security requirements don't actually want you to allow data to cross borders. So if you're collecting, customer data based on what you have to do as a bank or as a retailer, you might want to keep that information locally, or at least some semblance of that information locally. And you might want to protect your cloud assets at the edge instead of having your only layer of protection up at the cloud. So security becomes a really important edge application. Agility is another extremely important reason to have an edge too. And again, if you think about, sort of today's monolithic, client server applications, and your need to sort of service and maintain them at the point of presence, it's difficult, right? I mean, a lot of these things require truck rolls to upgrades and make changes. A lot of times you're swapping hardware in and out. The edge gives you the ability to roll out new microservices-based applications, or simply be able to take your existing legacy applications and virtualize them and have them run locally. And once that's been done, well, then you have a level of agility. It's so much easier to push adds, moves, or changes into the environment. So another way of looking at some of the benefits of the edge, and I won't go into too much detail on this because I want to leave some time for questions. And if anyone has any, please put them into the chat and I'll make sure I answer them. You see lower latency, continuous operations. Another one that's very important is the ability to really embed comprehensive monitoring and configuration management in the edge. One of the differences between cloud-based applications and a lot of the traditional legacy applications is the cloud comes from a framework where data is being collected dynamically, everything's being monitored, and generally speaking, you have a sort of a much smaller, lower total cost of ownership of that environment. And part of it is because of the proactive nature on it. The edge gives you the ability to do the same thing. You can plug IoT, the Internet of Things, systems into an edge infrastructure, gather information about your environment, gather information about your systems, gather operational data, and then act on it from there. Another point, which is also really important about the edge, is it gives you a common platform for cloud and in-store, in-branch applications to develop on. You can use the same technologies for cloud development, whether they're next-generation application architectures, microservices-based, using frameworks like Go, Ruby, Python, Docker, whatever have you. You get to do the same thing at the branch, at the store. This can plug into the same sort of technologies that are common in the cloud now: continuous operation, continuous deployment, and you get very agile along the way. So edge applications, right? There's a bunch of them. First of all, there's the ability to deal with really high resolution content, really rich immersive content. These content sets can be, multi-gigabyte in size, and pushing them or streaming them only from the cloud is really difficult. And if you're only dealing with a world where you have edge-based devices and are looking to push that content into every individual screen or every single display in a large location, it's also really problematic. An edge platform provides a great place to get the content down, make it available to everyone all at once. Also, a lot of the content starts to become interactive with orchestration associated to it. So you want to have an edge to be able to orchestrate changes to the content, interactivity to the content, interactive displays, all from the edge. Then another kind of a killer application, if you want to think of it that way, is artificial intelligence, machine learning and deep learning. These algorithms, like in the Amazon Go location, you do the training and algorithm management in the cloud, but the algorithms get actually run at the edge, and updated at the edge. Artificial intelligence, like one of the best examples I could think of machine learning and edge in action, is the self-driving car. The self-driving car has a lot of computation associated to it, but it's still connected to the cloud. But the integration and orchestration around those sensors and the decision the self-driving car has to make regarding starting, slowing down, speeding up, turning, whatever else have you, they can't be made from the cloud entirely. There's just too much latency and the lack of, sort of guarantee of connectivity. So they have to take place locally. And from that standpoint, self-driving cars, whether you're talking about things like Waymo or Tesla, they're really edge applications in action. Then, of course, there's the mobile device world, interacting with mobile devices, whether they're customers who are bringing their mobile devices into your branch or your store, or whether they're the mobile devices that you're giving to sales associates, or they're, IoT-style devices like fixed position tablets, or mobile tablets, whatever else have you. The edge is the place where those devices can be interacted with, whether it's simply for systems and support, i.e. things like, mobile device management or updates or changes, to those things, or whether it's interactive applications, web services applications that are being deployed. Then there's operations at scale. You know, again, if you've got 100 or 1,000 branches and you've got, you know, 10 or 50 individual devices or individual systems, each one of those branches, if you really want to manage and operate those at scale with tight cloud integration, Edge is the way to do it. Support for integration of legacy. So everybody has legacy infrastructure. They have applications and systems that aren't going to get replaced, you know, 30 seconds from now by some new next generation cloud-based infrastructure. You get to integrate to them at the edge. You get to take what might be dedicated physical systems and run them as virtuals, or take dedicated physical systems today and containerize their applications and run them locally, and Edge provides a place to do it. Then lastly, we have the security and compliance, which I mentioned earlier. So as we wrap up here, you know, the numbers show this is happening. 73% of enterprises today, probably more than that, are using the cloud. But most businesses maintain physical points of presence. This shows us, you know, per Gartner, that more than 50% of large enterprises will have at least six edge use cases in action by 2023. Then the last thing I'll leave you guys with is, you know, how do you get started? You know, so first, get smart about the edge. You know, it's here, it's real, and we think it's going to change a lot of things. So start doing your research, talk to experts. You know, from there, create an edge strategy. Almost every enterprise we interact with has a cloud strategy, but many of them come to the table without an edge strategy really formed. You really need both, and they should work together. It should be a formal thing. Talk to edge computing vendors. We're not the only ones out there. There are plenty of them out there. There are people to help you build it. There are people to help you plan it. There are people who can help you execute on it. Bring Edge into your labs and pilots. That's super important. Again, everyone is running labs and pilots of next generation technology, but don't forget about the fundamental infrastructures you should put in place to run it. And from there, I'll take any questions anyone else has. We got like a minute or two left.
Questions on the chat. Can you tell them?
There's some questions on the chat.
I'm looking. I don't see anything though. Can you read off a couple for me? Well, we're just about out of time. Okay, here we go. I'm sorry, I've got it. So one thing is, what's the best process for an application to be placed on the edge for a company? It really depends on your application stack. But generally speaking, if there's an application that needs to run locally, it belongs on the edge. If there's an application that would run better in a physical point of presence in the cloud, it should belong on the edge. And then the difference between 5G and the edge, which has come up a lot, well, 5G is a bandwidth technology. It's not in and of itself the edge. People are trying to associate edge with 5G as a next generation, much faster way to handle mobile devices. But at the end of the day, it's not, you know, edge is not an implicit part of it. Edge needs to be brought to the table. And the one thing I'll say about it is there really ends up being several different flavors of edge. There's the service provider edge. There's the edge that's going to be brought to you by the Verizons and the AT&Ts of the world. And then there's the enterprise edge. It's the edge that you're going to probably have to build yourself or build with a partner to put in place in your branches or in your locations.
What about the difference between edge versus and 5G?
I just mentioned that. I mean, again, 5G is a mobile technology for bandwidth. You know, edge computing is more of a software architecture. The one last question that Brooke had is, what technologies are required for an edge platform as a foundation criteria? Again, it depends, but we would say, generally speaking, we're living in a world of traditional, probably client-server-based systems with maybe systems that are either today in a data center or today could be migrating to cloud. Edge is sort of the next step for those in-branch location, those applications. Those applications that drive banking at your branch location ultimately are going to change and become edge applications. So that's the 20 minutes I have. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining today. I'm available for any questions. If anyone wants to reach me either through this program or through LinkedIn, I'll make sure you guys have my email as well. It's probably part of the materials you're getting from the show. But thanks so much. I really appreciate everyone's time today.